It's been a week of confirmation hearings for Donald Trump's cabinet picks, but one very important nomination is flying under the radar, and we cannot allow that to happen. My name is Brittany Page, and this is the Page Perspective. I am eager to get into the very necessary grilling of Trump's nominee and his disturbing views of people living in poverty. But first, on my previous video, I asked you all to make a prediction of when I would reach 100,000 subscribers because I am very, very close to this goal. The answers ranged from the end of January to April to summertime. Now I am even closer, so feel free to revise your prognostications if necessary in the comments below. And if you haven't yet, please take a moment to subscribe. It's free and it helps me in the battle against the YouTube algorithm. So you've heard about Pete Hegseth, you've heard about RFK Jr., you've heard about Pam Bondi, but have you heard about the megachurch pastor that Donald Trump has nominated to run the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD? His name is Scott Turner, and he is, like I said, a megachurch pastor who has contempt for the poor and supports policies that make it more difficult for people to access public assistance. And based on his history, it looks like he opposes the work of the agency that he has been nominated to run. This seems to be a theme for Trump's nominees, right? But Scott Turner's confirmation hearing took place before the U.S. Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs, led by Chairman Tim Scott and Ranking Member Senator Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren, of course, a senator that I love, who has a fantastic line of questioning for Scott Turner during this hearing, which we will see in a moment. But Scott Turner's opening statement sounded compelling at first. He tells a story of early childhood obstacles, chaos in his childhood home, the divorce of his parents, overcoming adversity, going on to play in the NFL for almost a decade. And I don't know about you, but I appreciate someone who has experienced adversity. I want to elevate people to positions of power who have experienced adversity, who weren't born into generational wealth and opportunity, who know what it is like to struggle at the bottom. But based on what Scott Turner now believes about our essential public safety net and public assistance for those struggling at the bottom, it seems like he has taken more of a ladder pulling approach, pulling the ladder up behind him rather than working to keep it on the ground and stabilize it so that other people can climb their way out like he did. But his opening statement was also light on the details as far as what his priorities would be for addressing our homelessness crisis, our housing affordability crisis, outside of repeatedly saying, we need to get our fiscal house in order multiple times. That is also not detailed, by the way, nor is it a plan. As the Secretary of HUD, he would oversee a massive agency charged with managing programs that help people access housing with housing assistance, public housing, rental assistance, preventing housing discrimination. And this job is more important than ever when housing is now unaffordable for half of renters in the United States, when only 34 affordable and available homes exist for every 100 extremely low-income renters, when homelessness is at an all-time high. And when you watch this hearing, one thing that Republicans and Democrats seem to agree on is that we need to build more housing. Often left out of this phrase is the word affordable housing, but both Republicans and Democrats talked about the need to building more affordable housing, making housing more accessible. That is going to cost money. So are Republicans willing to fund this? Leave it to Senator Elizabeth Warren to dig into the details on this, asking what Donald Trump's nominee to run HUD is prepared to do to address our housing affordability crisis. Watch this.
You recently said there is, quote, an ever-growing need for high-quality, affordable housing in our nation. Experts have said, as the chairman said, we need about 7 million new housing units in America. Now, there are a lot of explanations for our housing shortage. Local zoning and land use restrictions can make it harder to build homes. The cost of capital, which has been made worse by the Fed's decision to keep interest rates high, makes it even more difficult both to build and to buy housing. And there are places where the federal government can help. Take the HOME program. HUD gives grants to states and localities to help build and preserve affordable housing, and it works. In its history, HOME has supported the development of more than 1 million affordable units nationwide, including more than 100,000 homes in your home state of Texas. Mr. Turner, in 2023, you said that, quote, "It is more expensive than ever to build, and developers need access to more capital." Do you support additional federal investment in programs so that we can lower the cost of building affordable housing?
Thank you, Senator Warren. I appreciate our visit together, and thank you for your time in this. As you said, there are many factors to why housing is so expensive now. And I believe first we have to get our fiscal house in order in our country. Interest rates are at an all-time high. Inflation is at an all-time high.
Fair enough, Mr. Turner, but
Yes,
I'd just like to focus, because it is a big problem, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but the chairman's going to be tough on time. And that is, I just want to make sure I understand. Do you support additional federal investment in programs so that we can lower the cost of building affordable housing?
Thank you, Senator Warren. What I do support is maximizing the budget that we do have and making sure that the money.
So is that a no to additional investments?
It's a yes to maximizing the investment that we have and making sure that the programs that we do have are meeting the intended need and serving those that are intended to serve.
Well, I have to say that gives me real pause.
Oh boy. So that sounds like a no, right? We have to get our fiscal house in order. I told you. He said it repeatedly. We know that the Republican Party loves that line because we know what it means. It was clear in his answer. He wants to, quote, maximize the existing budget for HUD while simultaneously acknowledging that the budget falls short of what is required to address the housing affordability crisis. They don't have the cash for the scale of the problem. So are we interested in solving this crisis or not? Are we interested in addressing the problem or not? If we are, fund it. Make funding the solution a priority. Who cares about the, quote, record funding if you're not meeting the needs? You need more money, no? It's often said that budgets are moral documents. They illustrate our priorities as a society. We have to make choices, right? And right now, the Republican Party wants to sacrifice poor and working class people to pay for tax cuts for the wealthy and corporations. They are unwilling to push for more money to help the poor and working class on issues of housing, affordability, because they want to pretend to get their fiscal house in order. Do they mean to raise the debt ceiling to pay for Donald Trump's tax cuts for the wealthy and corporations? Is that getting our fiscal house in order? Now, the Democrats on this committee could have and should have gone harder on Scott Turner because he has noxious views of poverty and the poor, and this was made clear in essential reporting from ProPublica, specifically reporters Jesse Coburn and Andy Kroll. Reading from that reporting now, quote, as Donald Trump's nominee to run the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, Scott Turner may soon oversee the nation's efforts to build affordable apartments, protect poor tenants, and aid the homeless. As a lawmaker in the Texas House of Representatives, Turner voted against those very initiatives. Turner supported a bill ensuring landlords could refuse apartments to applicants because they received federal housing assistance. He opposed a bill to expand affordable rental housing. He voted against funding public-private partnerships to support the homeless and against two bills that called merely to study homelessness among young people and veterans. Behind those votes lay a deep-seated skepticism about the value of government efforts to alleviate poverty, a skepticism that Turner has voiced again and again. He has called welfare, quote, dangerous, harmful, and, quote, one of the most destructive things for the family. When one interviewer said receiving government assistance was keeping recipients in, quote, bondage of a, quote, worse form to find oneself in than slavery, Turner agreed. Seamus Roller, executive director of the National Housing Law Project, said Turner's views, if translated into policy, could increase homelessness. Quote, if at a fundamental level you believe that people getting assistance with their rent when they're very poor and struggling, if you think that's actually dependence and a bad thing, you're going to try to undermine those programs, he said. Absolutely. And I would recommend that you read this entire article. I will, as always, link to it in the description below. And honestly, outside of this ProPublica reporting and various activist organizations or nonprofits, I have not seen a focus on Scott Turner's nomination and the many concerning beliefs that he has about the population that he could be working with here. I believe part of this is due to, surprise, a lack of class solidarity. I know you're surprised to hear me say that. I think it's also due to a general lack of attention on the systems and power structures that keep inequality in place. I'm trying to change that. I know many of you are invested in trying to change that too. But listen, this isn't just a video filled with grievance. We can do something, and we should. In the description of this video and in the pinned comment below, you'll see a link to email your senators to tell them to vote no on Scott Turner. It's as easy as filling in your name and your zip code. And when I encourage people to take action in this way, I often hear from people who say, it's pointless. They tell me it won't matter. Contacting their elected officials, it's pointless. Well, it certainly won't matter if we continue to tell ourselves that we have no agency here, that change isn't possible. But if every single person who watches this video decides to get involved in politics at a local level in their area, if they decide to familiarize themselves with their elected representatives in Congress and make contacting them a regular part of their routine, I believe we will see change. So set aside that fear, the pessimism for today, and let's give this our best shot. What do you think? I'd love to know. You can call 202-656-1509 or send an email to idoubtit@dollemore.com. Still struggling with that number. As you can tell, you can support my work here by becoming a channel member for as little as $1.99 a month. You can do that by clicking the join button below, or you can head on over to Patreon, patreon.com/idoubtitpodcast. Please take care of yourselves as the inauguration approaches. Let's not give in. Let's stay in the fight. Take care, and I will see you next time.